now the Sunday Times rich list has now been released, and some are cashing in on broken Britain and making millions. Yeah.
This guy, Migrant Hotel King, Graham King, has entered the rich list with 750 million quid. This is after capitalising on the asylum seeker crisis. Interesting this, though, because it's like, is he actually selling Britain out, or is he a great businessman?
Well, certainly an opportunist, perhaps. The UK's richest gypsy, Alfie Best, nears his first billion from his caravan park empire, where he invested in US-style caravan parks and has built them as a solution to Britain's social housing crisis. Well, there you go, mega bucks in the US-style caravan parks.
Yeah, it's definitely solved any crisis in his life, hasn't it, if he's on his way to his first billion. Joining us now is Robert Watt, who has compiled the
Fantastic.
Sunday Times rich list. Robert, thank you very much. OK, look, how do you verify how wealthy these people actually are?
I wish I could say my life was jumping from one super yacht to the next. It's not. 90% of what I do is trawling through very boring accounts, registers of shareholder registers of public companies, publicly available information that anyone could do. I guess, and then forensically monitoring the sort of financial press as well. But also about 50% of the people on the Sunday Times rich list talk to us about their valuation. We've been doing this a long time. We've been doing this for 36 years. A lot of those people consider what we do to be a matter of public record. And as a result, they'll share stuff with us. Now, we've got to be careful, haven't we, that what they're showing us is correct, because we have all sorts of people trying to force their way up the list, down the list,
Really?
on the list and off the list. So
that's very interesting.
The list. Wait, sorry, just on that. So do you have people who are trying to get themselves off the rich list?
Absolutely. And there was a lot of that in about 2019, when some of these people thought that Jeremy Corbyn was about to become the Prime Minister. And they approached me and said, I think I'd like to be off this year, please, if you don't mind. Just slightly concerned I'll be first against the wall if the revolution comes. And I said, I'm sorry, we're a newspaper, we're a media organisation. It's not who's who. We're trying to do something serious here and track the wealth of Britain's wealthiest 350 people. We can't choose whether you're on it or off.
I mean, Robert, it's very interesting what you say about, yes, a lot of this information is publicly available. We don't want to put you out of a job, though. Clearly, a lot of work goes into this. So a lot of this information is publicly available. You then talk to about half of them to sort of verify how much money they've got. But obviously, you can't go into their bank accounts. So is most of this based on property and business portfolios rather than, what's actually cold, hard cash in their bank account?
Yeah, exactly. Most of the wealth that we're talking about here is tied up in companies and property. Most of it by far in terms of companies, and a lot of it is sort of valuing companies and putting which is the real sort of science really in what I do in terms of looking at a company and you value it usually by how much profits it's made in the last year, and you use a multiple of 8 or perhaps 10 times, depending on what the sector is. I won't get too into the weeds of that because I'll send the viewers to sleep. But then there are a lot of people will share information with me, like, for example, bank balances. I will be sent tax returns and financial statements, because for some of these people, they feel we live in a society where great sportsmen are recognised for their achievements, great musicians are celebrated, writers, even politicians, even. But often with business people, successful self-made entrepreneurs aren't. And so they feel that the Sunday Times rich list does that. Now, that's not really the reason we do it. We do it because for 2 reasons, really, because we think it's an important part of a democracy that you know where wealth lies and where it's being accumulated. And we know that also that a lot of our readers find particularly the self-made entrepreneurs on our list, and that's a majority of the people now on the Sunday Times rich list, they find these people inspiring.
I was about to ask you that. Do you find this inspirational? Because a lot of people look at this type of list with absolute disgust. I mean, let's be frank. You talked about some of them being worried about Jeremy Corbyn. But it's true. A lot of people, we've got a cost of living crisis, a lot of people who are very poorly paid or having to rely on welfare. And then they see this list of these mega rich people who wouldn't think twice about spending, £5,000 on a bottle of champagne.
We've got a feature this year on a yacht that costs £284,000 a day to hire.
Wow.
I mean, it is extraordinary. But there'll be people who watching this today who think that billionaires are part of the problem about what's wrong with Britain today. And there'll be others who think they're part of the solution. But we need, our economy needs people who create jobs not by the 10 or by the 20, but by the 1,000. And the Sunday Times Rich List is full of those people. Now, what we've seen in the last year for the first time, really, is a fall in the number of UK billionaires. We're seeing a number of things. We're seeing some of them, their businesses aren't performing as well, partly because of higher interest rates, partly because of persistent inflation and slower economic growth. But we're also seeing some of the global super rich who've come to the UK in recent years have left, and we're also seeing fewer of the global super rich coming to here. And it's an interesting debate, isn't it? You know, do we as us muggles, do we benefit from having these people? Well, actually, some of them we really do, and we would struggle to our economy would struggle if more of them left.
Could I just one final one with you, because there was, well, a few that stand out to me, but one that I just thought was particularly interesting was this Migrant Hotel King, right? Because this is an industry that presumably didn't really exist a few years ago, and he's managed to, you know, smash it, hasn't he, really? I mean, what?
3.5 million a year.
About 3.5, no, I think 3.5 million a day.
A day, sorry.
A day.
Yes. Could you just shed a bit more light on this guy then, please?
It's an extraordinary story, this, and this is one of the reasons why you may not like the Rich List. You may think it's a bit blingy for you, but he is a very good example of why this work it needs to be done. Really, we should know where wealth is being tracked. So Graham King, 25 years ago, what was he doing? He was running cab firms in Canvey Island, as far as we're aware, running nightclubs and teen discos, and he had the understood that there was a need from the Home Office to find accommodation for asylum seekers, for refugees. And he got into it in about 2000, founded his business then in Clear Springs. His business, we know it's the vast majority of its turnover are now these mega contracts with the Home Office to provide accommodation and transport services and food for asylum seekers. The annual turnover of the business is £1.3 billion, and he's very, very quiet and no interest in a public profile whatsoever, but exactly the sort of person who we're trying to keep an eye on and understand with the work we do, which you can read now. It's all on live now. I know we're the Sunday Times Rich List, but we launch on a Friday, so you can head to the website now and read all about him and the 349 other people on the list as well.
Yes, Robert, I was going to ask you whether he spoke to you and whether he, wanted to parade the fact that he's making so much money off these contracts, but you answered that. No, he absolutely does not want it.
Absolutely not.
He'll be wanting to get off the list.
Well, I don't know. He's not engaged with us anyway. We tried many times to talk to him, but we spoke to people who around him, people who are even people who've been working in his premises. And there's a great profile of him and the business on the Sunday Times website now, which is a good read. Now there are some really more inspiring entrepreneurs as well. If I could just mention one, a lovely husband and wife from Sheffield, who the mum's was a nursery teacher, and she said it's getting good teaching aids to take to the nursery was really, really hard to find. So her husband John started making them for her before he went to work as a solicitor, and late into the night. That business Twinkle that they started from their back bedroom, now employs more than 1,000 people, and it's worth 500 million.
I used to do some teaching of little kids, and I always used Twinkle. I'm sure there are other providers out there, but it is a fantastic resource. Thank you so much. So interesting to speak to the man who compiled all of this. Robert Watts, great to have your time. He is the compiler of the Sunday Times Rich List.